Power is never handed over, it's taken. For centuries, philosophers argued about how the world should work, how morality, virtue, or goodness might guide human affairs. But Niccolò Machiavelli was different. He didn't waste time with ideals. He stripped away the illusions and exposed the brutal mechanics of how people are really controlled. His insights were so sharp, so unsettling, that his very name became a synonym for cunning, manipulation, and cold calculation. And yet his fingerprints are everywhere today. In politics, in business, in your workplace, even in your personal relationships. Machiavelli didn't just describe how rulers keep nations in line. He revealed the timeless rules of influence, how ordinary people can be led, persuaded, and yes, manipulated. What you are about to hear is the knowledge most powerful people would prefer you never understand. Because once you do, you'll start seeing the strings behind human behavior, strings that haven't changed in 500 years. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in inventing tricks. It was in seeing people exactly as they are, without the mask. While his peers wrote about the nobility of man, Machiavelli wrote about the reality of man. And the reality was simple. Men are so simple of mind, and so dominated by their immediate needs, that a deceitful man will always find plenty willing to be deceived. That one observation sits at the core of his philosophy. People respond far less to ideals, and far more to their immediate self-interest. They are driven by what they want right now: security, advantage, pleasure, not by lofty principles or distant consequences. Modern wisdom likes to tell us humans are rational creatures who weigh options carefully. Machiavelli knew better. Strip away the excuses and the moral justifications, and two forces drive most decisions: fear and self-interest. And once you recognize this, human behavior becomes predictable. People will choose safety over principle. They'll chase quick rewards over long-term gain. They'll follow strength and abandon weakness. Think about how quickly public opinion changes with circumstance. A nation that demands war after an attack will cry for peace once the casualties rise. The employee who flatters management to their face will insult them in private. The friend who swears loyalty will vanish the moment loyalty costs too much. Machiavelli didn't condemn this inconsistency. He mapped it. He understood it as the terrain on which power moves. And when you know the terrain better than others, you hold the advantage. One of his most piercing insights was this: morality is often performance. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few truly know what you are. That gap between appearance and reality is the very space where manipulation thrives. Because people don't judge you on your private truth. They judge you on what they see. The leader who seems decisive is trusted more than the one who actually is. The co-worker who loudly brags about his work is often valued more than the quiet worker who actually carries the team. The romantic partner who makes grand gestures is often mistaken for being more loving than the one who shows quiet, steady care. Appearances, not essence, shape judgment. That's why the appearance of honesty or strength often counts more than being truly honest or truly strong. And this isn't limited to kings and generals. It's the rule in every arena of life. The colleague who plays up their role in front of the boss. The friend who posts the highlight reel of their life on social media. The partner who knows how to stage affection so others admire the relationship. Once you grasp this, you stop reacting to appearances. You start shaping them. You see that the key to influence is not to fight human nature, but to work with it. And this is where Machiavelli delivers his first principle of control. Don't try to manipulate people against their nature. Manipulate them through it. If humans crave security, offer it. If they crave advantage, frame yourself as the path to it. If they crave approval, become the one who grants or withholds it. In other words, meet people where they are, not where you wish they were. This isn't cynicism. It's realism. Machiavelli believed the world devours the naive, the ones who expect fairness, consistency, or virtue to protect them. But the man who sees clearly, who understands fear, self-interest, and the hunger for appearances, has the map that others lack. And that map is where control begins. Machiavelli posed a question that still echoes across centuries. Is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? His answer was blunt. If you cannot be both, it is far safer to be feared. This goes against nearly everything modern culture teaches about leadership, influence, and relationships. We're told to win love, to inspire loyalty, to be admired. And yes, being loved is useful. But Machiavelli saw its fatal weakness. Love is unstable. Love depends on obligation, and obligations are fragile. People claim loyalty, but the moment loyalty collides with self-interest, it collapses. The employee who swears devotion to their boss will leave the instant a higher salary is offered. The friend who promises eternal support disappears when it costs them too much. The partner who says, "I'll never walk away," may walk the second it no longer serves them. Machiavelli put it plainly. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and covetous of gain. Fear, on the other hand, is not dependent on affection. Fear is rooted in consequence, and consequence does not waver. Love can fade overnight. Fear endures so long as the punishment is credible. People may stop loving you, but they rarely stop fearing the results of crossing you. Now, this does not mean cruelty. Machiavelli made a critical distinction. A ruler should inspire fear without creating hatred. Hatred is dangerous. Hatred drives people to risk everything for revenge. Hatred builds alliances against you. And once people hate you, they no longer fear losing because they've already lost something. So, what does effective fear look like? It is not random violence. It is not uncontrolled rage. It is the consistent, predictable enforcement of consequences. The leader who disciplines fairly and consistently is respected, even feared, but not hated. The negotiator who can credibly walk away from the table always has the upper hand. The partner who demonstrates that certain lines cannot be crossed without cost will not need to argue about respect twice. Fear works not because it is loud, but because it is steady. It is the unspoken knowledge that disobedience or disrespect always carries a cost. And here lies Machiavelli's real lesson. Control comes not from being adored, but from being positioned as someone who can affect outcome. You must make others more dependent on you than you are on them. You must become the person whose favor brings benefits and whose disfavor creates loss. When people realize their easiest path forward is to align with you, and their hardest path is to resist you, you hold power. Think about the workplace. The manager who tries to be friends with everyone usually loses authority. They hesitate to enforce rules, and their kindness is mistaken for weakness. Contrast that with a leader who maintains some distance, who makes expectations crystal clear, who enforces consequences without apology. That leader may not be loved, but they're respected. And respect, laced with a measure of fear, is far more reliable than affection. This is not a call to abandon empathy or kindness. It's about understanding that kindness alone will never sustain influence. Influence requires teeth. It requires that when people weigh their options, following your lead is always safer than defying it. Machiavelli knew that humans act from self-interest first. So align your interest with theirs, but also make sure there's a cost to breaking that alignment. And remember, the point is not to create paranoia. The point is to create certainty. Certainty that disrespect has consequences. Certainty that betrayal won't be tolerated. Certainty that choosing you is safer than opposing you. This is how fear becomes productive rather than destructive. And this principle stretches far beyond kings and princes. In relationships, the partner who needs less often dictates the terms. In social groups, the one who grants or withholds approval shapes the behavior of others. In negotiations, the person with fewer emotional investments has more leverage. In every case, the mechanics are the same. Whoever enforces the rules of consequence holds the reins of control. So, Machiavelli's question still matters today. Would you rather be loved or feared? The world will tell you love is superior. But watch carefully. Who truly holds power, the adored, or the one whose boundaries are never crossed? The answer is as true now as it was 5 centuries ago. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are. That single line from Machiavelli explains why image often outweighs reality. In the theater of human affairs, perception is power, and whoever controls the perception controls the game. Machiavelli understood that people rarely judge you by your actual character. They judge by the mask you wear, the outcomes you show, the reputation you cultivate. That's why perception management is at the heart of manipulation. Control the narrative, and you control people's beliefs. Control their beliefs, and you control their behavior. 1. Selective virtue. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, honest, humane, religious, and upright. But, and this is crucial, to hold the ability to abandon those virtues when necessary. This isn't hypocrisy, it's strategy. Because no single virtue is useful in all situations. Mercy, in the wrong moment, emboldens enemies. Honesty, in the wrong context, exposes weaknesses. Generosity, offered too freely, can bankrupt a leader. So, the wise player projects consistency while practicing flexibility. The public sees a man of virtue. Behind the curtain, he chooses which virtues to use and when to suspend them. This duality maximizes freedom of action while minimizing reputational damage. In other words, you don't need to always be good. You only need to appear consistently good. 2. Symbolic action. Machiavelli also understood that most people don't evaluate long-term consistency. They remember visible gestures. A single grand, symbolic act can outweigh years of quiet, steady effort. A politician photographed at a disaster site gets more credit than one who quietly funds long-term relief. A manager who announces one big award is seen as more supportive than one who quietly supports his team every day. A partner who stages a dramatic romantic gesture is remembered more than the one who provides steady care. Humans are wired this way. We remember what we see, not what we don't. So, if you want to shape perception, focus your energy on high-visibility moments. Create images and gestures that tell a story, even if they don't reflect the whole truth. Symbolism is often more powerful than substance. 3. Control of information. The next principle is information control. Machiavelli warned, "The prince who deceives will always find people willing to be deceived." This doesn't require constant lying. In fact, lies are dangerous if discovered. True manipulation comes from selective emphasis. Highlight what serves you. Downplay what doesn't. Reveal truths when they benefit you. Conceal them when they don't. Modern politics, spur campaigns, and even social media influencers all operate on this principle. They frame narratives so that their weaknesses are hidden within a larger story, and their strengths are amplified. This is not fabrication. It's curation. You don't create an entirely false image. You present a strategically edited one for delegated blame, claimed credit. Another Machiavellian technique. Associate yourself with good news, but distance yourself from bad. Leaders often deliver positive announcements personally, while letting subordinates deliver unpopular ones. Bosses take credit for team successes but blame circumstances or lower managers for failures. Even in families and relationships, people intuitively push responsibility for negative outcomes onto others, while keeping the glow of positive ones for themselves. This isn't cowardice, it's perception management. If people see you as the source of benefits but not of harm, your reputation remains untarnished and your authority intact. Why does this work? Because the crowd doesn't care about intentions. They care about results and impressions. They don't measure your inner truth. They measure what they see, hear, and feel. And this is why perception so often outperforms reality. The loud but mediocre worker is promoted over the quiet but excellent one. The showy politician wins votes over the diligent administrator. The charming manipulator wins hearts over the honest but unpolished rival. It's unfair, but it's human nature. The first rule of manipulation: don't waste energy trying to force people to value your inner reality. Accept that most will never see it. Instead, work with the fact that they live by appearances. Machiavelli's wisdom here is cold but clear. You don't need to be what you appear to be. You only need to control the gap between the two. That gap is your playground. That's where manipulation lives. Because when you master appearances, you stop being reactive. You stop waiting for others to judge you randomly. Instead, you actively guide what they see, what they believe, and what they repeat to others. And once you hold perception, you hold power. Machiavelli wasn't just a theorist. He didn't stop at abstract principles. He laid out practical moves, tactics that rulers used in his day and that manipulators still use now. Think of them as the tools of the trade. 5 centuries later, they remain terrifyingly effective. 1. Strategic generosity. Machiavelli once said, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance." In other words, money and material gain often matter more to people than love or loyalty. If you want to create influence, don't just give randomly. Give strategically. Make sure your generosity is visible. Hidden kindness builds little leverage. Make sure it's memorable, something they can tie directly to you. And make sure it creates dependency. If they need you for resources, they'll protect their connection with you. That's why savvy leaders publicize bonuses. Politicians broadcast the benefits they secure, and networkers give favors that create ongoing ties. It's not kindness for kindness' sake. It's investment. 2. Calculated mercy. Another of his chilling observations. Men should either be caressed or eliminated, because they can avenge small injuries, but not severe ones. Half measures breed resentment. If you're going to reconcile with an enemy, do it fully. Turn them into an ally with real generosity. If you can't, then remove their ability to hurt you altogether. Think about it in organizations. A boss who keeps a disgraced employee around in a diminished role often fuels bitterness and sabotage. But if that same boss either reintegrates the employee fully or cuts ties cleanly, the threat vanishes. The same goes for negotiations and conflicts. Partial concessions leave everyone dissatisfied. Complete resolution or decisive removal ends the problem. 3. The manufactured crisis. We've all heard the modern phrase, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." That idea is Machiavellian. In stable times, power structures resist change. But in crisis, people accept measures they'd normally reject. Fear makes them pliable. Uncertainty makes them desperate for leadership. Smart rulers didn't always create crises, but they were prepared to exploit them. They introduced new laws, consolidated authority, or eliminated rivals under the cover of chaos. In today's world, the same principle applies. Leaders roll out sweeping changes during downturns. Companies restructure during scandals, and governments pass laws during emergencies. When panic rises, resistance falls. 4. Strategic alliances. Machiavelli warned that the prince must be the one from whom favors are expected. In modern terms, make yourself the gatekeeper. Position yourself as the path others must take to reach opportunities, resources, or approval. In business, this means structuring workflows so decisions run through you. In social life, it means being the connector, the person who knows people, who introduces opportunities, who makes others dependent on your network. The more people rely on you as their channel, the less they can bypass you. Dependence is a form of quiet control. 5. Predictive consistency. One of Machiavelli's sharpest insights. Nothing earns esteem like a reputation for delivering. Even if every decision isn't perfect, consistency creates an aura of inevitability. That's why effective leaders often make bold, visible commitments and then move heaven and earth to keep them. Because when people see that your predictions come true and your promises are fulfilled, they start believing in your competence as fact. It's not about flawless performance. It's about creating the perception that your leadership is reliable. That aura discourages challenges before they even start. The pattern behind the tools. Notice something? Each of these tactics, generosity, mercy, crisis, alliances, consistency, isn't just about what you do. It's about how what you do affects perception. Generosity ties loyalty to your hand. Mercy, done right, eliminates future threats. Crisis creates openings for consolidation. Alliances centralize dependence on you. Consistency builds a reputation of inevitability. They all work not because they change reality, but because they change how others see reality. And this is the genius of Machiavelli. He didn't describe a world of morality. He described a world of outcomes. And in that world, appearances and consequences matter far more than intentions. So whether you're in a boardroom, a negotiation, or a social circle, remember, the toolbox of control is still in play. Some people are already using it on you, and unless you recognize it, you're the pawn on their board. Machiavelli wrote for princes who commanded armies and ruled city-states. But his insights fit our world with unsettling precision. Today, the most effective manipulators don't rule with swords or decrees. They rule with psychology. They rarely issue threats. Instead, they design environments where people choose to act in their favor. They shape incentives, bend perception, and let others believe they're acting freely, even as their choices have already been engineered. This is manipulation at its highest form, directing outcomes while preserving the illusion of autonomy. Subtle tactics in modern life. The strategic information broker doesn't lie. They just highlight certain facts, hide others, and time their revelations. They appear transparent, but they're always choosing what you know and when you know it. The office Machiavellian doesn't openly attack rivals. They let their rivals' successes look like luck, while their failures get magnified. They don't spread rumors. They just ask innocent-sounding questions that plant seeds of doubt. Strange the project missed its deadline again, isn't it? The social manipulator doesn't demand compliance. They create situations where compliance feels natural. They use peer pressure, subtle hints, and group expectations to push people into line without ever making a direct command. The relationship controller doesn't scream threats. They remind you, indirectly, of your dependency. I'm so glad I could help you with that job connection. The message beneath the words is clear. You need me more than I need you. These moves all share the same DNA. Indirect pressure, plausible deniability, and perception over force. The iron fist now wears a velvet glove. Meta-manipulation. But the most dangerous tactic of all is what we might call meta-manipulation. This is when someone shapes not just your decision, but your entire sense of freedom. They limit your options, control the flow of information, and structure the environment so tightly that any choice you make leads exactly where they want it to. Leaders who present a pre-decided plan as if it came from collaboration. Marketers who give you two buying options, both of which result in you purchasing. Negotiators who pretend to concede something minor while locking you into their major demand. You walk away thinking you had power, when in truth, every step was predicted. The best defense. Now, you might be asking, if this is how manipulation works, what hope does anyone have of avoiding it? The answer is awareness. Machiavelli himself would remind you. Refusing to acknowledge the rules doesn't exempt you from them. It makes you prey to those who already use them. Seeing the mechanics of influence, fear, self-interest, appearances, controlled narratives, doesn't mean you must use them maliciously. But ignoring them guarantees you'll be ruled by those who do. Awareness is your shield. When you notice the selective framing, the timed revelations, the strategic silences, you gain the ability to step back and ask, whose game am I playing right now? The question of ethics. Still, this leaves us with a disturbing question. Does knowing these principles automatically corrupt you? Does understanding manipulation make you a manipulator? Machiavelli's answer was more nuanced than his reputation suggests. He wrote, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." In other words, if you insist on playing only by ideal rules while everyone else bends them, you will be crushed. Ignorance doesn't keep you pure. It keeps you powerless. But here's the crucial point. Power itself is neutral. The mechanics of manipulation, the shaping of perception, the use of fear, the management of information, are simply tools. They can be used to exploit, but they can also be used to protect, to lead, to create order where chaos would otherwise reign. A parent can manipulate a child into healthy habits. A leader can use perception to inspire rather than deceive. A strategist can enforce consequences to protect their people, not just themselves. The difference isn't in the tools, it's in the aims they serve. The real Machiavellian position, the strongest stance, is not blind idealism. And it's not ruthless cynicism either. The strongest stance is clear-eyed realism, seeing the world as it truly operates, then choosing consciously how to engage with it. Because when you understand the mechanics of influence, you're no longer at the mercy of others' games. You can recognize manipulation without being trapped by it. You can use strategy without becoming a tyrant. Machiavelli himself might say, "The most powerful position is not to reject the game, nor to play it without restraint, but to master it, and then decide when to apply it." Power isn't given, it's taken. And the ones who take it aren't always the smartest, or the kindest, or the most deserving. They're the ones who see clearly what others refuse to see. Fear and self-interest. Appearance over reality. The leverage of consequence. The shaping of perception. These are the real levers of control. Ignore them, and you'll be controlled. Understand them, and you'll never be caught off guard again. That's the uncomfortable truth of Machiavelli. And it hasn't changed in 500 years.